Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. It's Andy here, AM Media Games. In this video it's kind of a tutorial slash just a little bit of like advice. So it's all about lighting. In this video I'm going to be discussing lighting techniques, tips and ways to adjust your lighting that makes your scene a little bit better. Now obviously this is my own personal opinion. There's people out there who will do things completely different to the way I do it, and they'll probably make their scene look 10 times better than me. But the way I do lighting is I try to be as minimalistic as possible. So we're gonna work through this video together, so I'll try and go as slow as I can. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna open up our modeling tools. Now if you for any reason don't have modeling enabled, if you go into plugins and then type in modeling tools, so there it is there. So you can tick and check that box. It'll probably save or exit, and then you need to restart the engine. So you enable modeling tools in the editor mode, and this should give you the access to the modeling tools here. So in here we're going to go to box and we're going to create a cube. We're going to set our snap into the grid to 10, just so we can get more accurate placements. As you can see there, every 10 units it will move the block. So every 10 units it moves, and then we can fit one perfectly in the grid sphere on the map. So we're going to place that into the scene. I'm going to start playing just to see the size and get a reference to my player. Let's put my flashlight away. So here we can see that it's around probably about hip height. So if this was real world, it'd be around hip height to my player. So I want that to be a little bit higher, so I can create another one and drop that on top, and then I'll do one more and then one more for good luck, why not? So then I've got the wall height that I want for my level, and I'm also going to then copy and paste these. So if you want to see what keys I'm using to do some of these actions, you can keep an eye on the key press logger there, just in the top side of the screen. So to copy something, it's hold left alt, left click and then drag, and it will make a copy of that object. So we're going to make a wall. Now when doing this, so we can create just a small scene to test lighting. I'm not going to go into over advanced lighting tips and tricks, not because I don't know how, it's more because I don't want to overcomplicate the video. I don't want to make the video too long, and I don't want to scare off newcomers to Unreal where things sound too complicated. So we've created these walls and we're going to copy these. So we're going to drag, and I want to hop into the game again because I want to see the size reference to my player. So it want to be a nice corridor, but I want it to be just big enough that it's not too claustrophobic, but it's wide enough to walk through comfortably. So now that we've got the top part set, so we're 3 blocks high with the 4th one that's going to make up the ceiling. So there we have our first part to our corridor, and then we can select, I'm doing it the slow way. So then we can go to our first one, select all of the boxes, and then we can then go to actor, we can merge and then merge actor. I'm going to name this one merged custom walls, and then save, and that's going to create a static mesh, so we can delete all of those. And then we can drag that into the scene. So this is now one unit rather than multiple. Makes everything a lot more tidy in your outliner. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can set this up on the grid and we can copy and paste this over. Now this is not how you make a horror game. This is just how you set up lighting to make the lighting look a little bit better in your scene. So I'm creating a corridor so we can then test out different lighting methods in our levels. So we can see here we've got a corridor, we've got a directional light shining in from behind me because it's creating a shadow on this angle here, and it's coming in from behind in this angle. So you can create a directional light. So to do that, you want to go to your quick add to project, and then you go to lights, and then you get a directional. Now this is a represents like a sun. So this is your sun in the scene. I don't mean your child, I mean the sun in the sky. So with the sun in the sky, you can change the direction. Now you can do that here, and you can manipulate that as well, so you can move that around in the scene. So we've got it shining through this way with a nice sunset there, and we can have it reset to default position, which is here in the sky. We can set it to -90 so it's directly above us, and then it's going to be doing a uniform projection of light straight down from the top of us all the way down, so everything inside isn't being hit by the sun. Now you notice that the light is still quite bright inside, and you can make it a little bit darker by reducing your indirect lighting. So indirect lighting is the bounced rays. So if you were to shine a torch on a piece of white paper in a dark room, the light would bounce off the white paper like a light box, and it would spread that light around the room. That's kind of what's happening now, like when you shine a light in a mirror and the light bounces from the mirror. So your light, indirect lighting intensity, is the amount of light that's bouncing from your light source, hitting a wall, and then lighting everything else up in the scene from bounced light. So if you increase this value to 6, you can see that as the light comes into this corridor from the sun, we're getting some good bounced light. So if we increase the brightness, everything's going to go brighter, obviously, and if we decrease the brightness, everything's going to go a little bit darker, which is again very obvious. So we're going to set that back to default, which is 1, and then we're going to look at some more techniques with lighting. So we're going to make this corridor a little bit longer so we can set up some decent lights in our scene, and just like that. So we're going to get rid of our intensity and our light. We're going to set that to 0. So now we're in complete pitch darkness, black light, with no light at all. And then we're going to set our scene to unlit. So that's Alt and 3, or you can select it here. And then from here we're going to add different types of light to the scene, and I'll try to explain them the best I can. Now, I don't work for Epic Games, so I'm going to try and explain it in my interpretation. There's going to be people that might disagree with that opinion. That's perfectly fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. This is just me trying to help people learn. So we're going to go to quickly add to the scene, and then we're going to try a point light. So we're going to drop that into the scene. You can't see anything at the moment because we're not rendering any light. We're currently in unlit. So let's go into lit, and we can see here that we have this point light, which is kind of like omnidirectional. So this is a light that emits the same amount of brightness in all directions, 360 degrees from the center. So we can see that if we put this in the center of our scene, we've got equal light here, here, and here. if I move it closer to the ceiling, you can see where our hotspot is, where our light's projecting, and it's getting a bit darker down here. If we move it up again, we can see now it's a little bit darker here, and now we've got all the light at the top. Now, this is kind of representing a bulb, so a point light is the best example I can give is kind of like a bulb in a normal lamp or a ceiling light. A spotlight is, so this is your spotlight. So a spotlight is basically like a searchlight on the bottom of a helicopter, or in your old stealth games, you want to avoid the searchlight because if it catches you, the alarm goes off. So that's the spotlight in a sense. Spotlights are good for, a good technique for a spotlight would probably be to add really good dynamic shadows. So if you had a horror game and you had like a spotlight out of the side of a window, you could have the light from like a street light shining through the window. I'm going to try and go into as much detail as I can, but I don't want to overcomplicate it. So a point light is like your bulb. Spotlight is a spotlight. It's the kinds of things like you have in kitchens, on like work cabinets and worktops. You've got rectangular light or rect light. So this is going to be, let me get rid of that one and that one. So a rect light will project light in all directions forwards of the light source. So it's kind of like a light box at a photo shoot or a flash on a camera. So it will do a lot of burst light forwards, but it won't do anything behind. So there won't be any light at all behind the rectangular light. So it's like when you see like photo shoots and they have all of these huge light boxes around the scene, and they want uniform light on a subject so that it's lit up evenly. So you'd have multiples of these, and they'd all be shining towards, and it takes away that kind of like that the bad shadowing, the bad lighting on the subject. So these are good for ceiling fluorescent bulbs, like tube lighting. So you can put these on the ceiling, and then you can expand the size. So this will be the attenuation. So this is how far in a sphere shape that we're going to start to project that light. So the higher the attenuation, the more distance the light will go. That causes complications in a different way. So we don't want that. So I'll explain that in a second. So we're going to set the intensity to 30. We're going to set the attenuation range to 500. And we have what's called a source width and a height. Source height and a source. Put the teeth back in. A source width and a source height. Try and say that one fast. So the source width is in this direction, is how far across the light will be spread from its original source, and then the source height will be in the opposite direction, and we can see there that light's stretching. So if you had like a fluorescent light bulb, like tube lighting, you could have it like this, so then you'd get nice uniform even projected light across that inner rectangular shape here where the mouse is traveling down. So this is where your light's coming from, this section here. This is your barn door effect, which is kind of like the edge of the light housing. So where the bulb would go, you'd have the barn door effect is where the light can't project from. it's the best way I can explain that. So you've got your barn door length, which you can see there, and then you've got your height. So if I drop that down, you can see that it drops that distance of where that projection starts, and then we can expand that out, and then we can move that up and down. So let's put them back to default. So the next thing down in your list on your parameters is your use temperature. So you can have warm lighting or cold. So if we set it to warm, let's say 4500, which will give us an orangey glow, kind of vintage film-esque. Or if we set it all the way to max, this will give us a cold light, which is more like the newer style kind of car headlights, or LED power efficient light bulbs that you get in a lot of bathrooms. So that's that explained to an extent. So you can just adjust this one to get the kind of temperature or the brightness, sorry, the temperature and the color change of your light. So let's uncheck that. And then we have down here, we've got affects world, which basically means that if this is unticked, it won't affect the world at all. It basically won't light anything up in the scene because it's not interacting with any of the meshes. We have cast shadows, so if we don't want it to cast a shadow, so if we drop this sphere into the scene, and we can see there it's casting a shadow. If we click on our red light, I'll explain that as well. If we click on our red light and uncheck that, it won't cast any shadows on any objects. That's really good if you want to have a light that doesn't have any need or any reason to project a shadow, which saves on resources for your final light baking, or when it comes to packaging your game up and you've got everything set up, you might have a specific reason for having a light in an area that doesn't project shadows. Not sure why, but I'm sure there's always a reason for it. Okay, so we know that, I went over this a little bit earlier, we know that indirect lighting is the amount of bounce light. So if we increase that, we can see that the light bouncing off the walls is increasing everywhere we look. We can see here we've got volumetric scattering intensity, so that's how much the light will interact with volumetric fog, clouds, how vivid a God ray will be when it shines through trees, etc. I'll show you that again. I'll show you that in a minute. So we're gonna set that back to default, and we're gonna move on to our next light type. So let's get rid of this one, and we're gonna go on to spotlights. So spotlights are a little bit different. They do an extra function that's slightly different to a red light, because we can project light at high intensity in a very narrow or wide range. So let's set this to 30, and we will do attenuation to 500, and then we'll change the inner cone. So that's our main focus point, and if we bring that in, we'll get the softer edges. So let's set that like that. Actually, we'll do it a little bit more narrow, so we'll bring that in, and then we're going to scroll down. Let's rotate that this way a little bit. I'm going to bring that out and then up. There we go. So we're going to scroll down, highlight our spotlight, and then down here we can see volumetric scattering intensity. And then also, if we keep on scrolling, we should see an option set this to movable. there should be an option on here. Let's go to exponential height fog. Let's enable, so if you haven't got one of them in your scene, you can add one to follow along. So that's in here. You go to volumes, sorry, all classes, and then just type in expo, and then you can get height fog. Then just drag and drop that in anywhere is fine. So we're going to click on our exponential height fog, and we're going to scroll down until we see volumetric fog, which is here. I'm going to tick that on. So you can see a very subtle change happening in this area here when I tick it on and then I tick it off. So it's adding a little bit of fog to the scene, and we can increase the amount of fog by increasing the scattering distribution underneath our volumetric fog tick box just here. So we can set that. So we can adjust that back to defaults of 0.2, and then we're going to scroll all the way up to see fog density. We can set that to max 0.05, and then we can increase or decrease this value. So this one's going to go to the very low 0.001. And then we're going to go to our volumetric fog, and then we're going to go extinction scale, and then we're going to drag our extinction scale up to about, let's say, maybe 2.5. You can see there that we've got nice fogging effect on that light. And then we want to cast volumetric shadow. And then if you have a look at what that's done, you can see it's like God rays. It's hard to see probably on the recorded video, but if let's make a few of these, but we'll do small ones. We'll do it like this, and then we'll increase the volumetric scattering, which is this one, on our light source, so on our spotlight. And if we increase that, we can see there. If you can see that now, you'll see a really good, so there's an occlusion happening here with the light. So anything that's in the shadows, let's see if I can make that look even better. There we go. You can see here, wherever the sphere is blocking the light, we have a really good detail of like shadowed lighting, well, shadowed volumetric fog, which is like the God rays. So it's shining through and simulating, blocking out that light really well. So if we look at it from this side, we can see where that light is blocked by the spheres, if that makes sense. See, you can see it there, right here and right here. So you should be able to see that as well if you're following along to the video. And it doesn't matter what the shape is or what the object is, it'll have the same impact. So if I remove this one, let's copy the location, and then we'll move that out of the way just so I can get the side on. And then we're going to get our spotlight, and we're going to increase our attenuation to 1000, and we're going to increase our brightness. There we go. So you can see there you've got really good lighting effect. So there's a reason why I set this up this way. It's because what you could do in one of your games, if you have, let's move all these out of the way, and let's say, I mean, it looks good as is. If this was all textured and this was in a horror game, it would look great. You could have your brick walls with your, maybe like an alleyway, with your pipes and your ambient sounds, and then you've got your spotlight casting volumetric shadows down your alley. Let's adjust this slightly so it goes a bit more in that direction, and then we can do just like that. And then what we can do then, actually, we'll do that and then that. So we could create, you could have this in your own game as well. You could have like okay, so we could do, let's go into modeling, and I hope you're still following along. So we're going to add a cube into our scene. I absolutely love these cubes. So we've got another cube in. We've got lots of cubes everywhere. And then we're going to shrink this down and scale it up and shrink it in. And then if you can imagine, this is like, let's say this is somewhere where you can't go as a player. This is just another good little lighting technique. A lot of games use this. It's very overused. A lot of horror games specifically do this technique, especially in Alien Isolation. So you've got your light source behind this object, and this object is casting a shadow. But if we set this to a rotator and set the pivot point to the center, we do center for the pivot. So that would be, select your object, go to modeling, go to transform, select pivot, select the center, accept, and then close. And then we're going to add a make rotation. So rotating movement. And then we know that this is our X. So we want it to roll on our X. We want a roll movement. So we're going to click on our rotating movement, and we're going to get our X and get, let's say 50, 0 on that one. And then if we go into the game, let's make sure it's movable. Yes, it is. And then press play. We can see here that because we've got the volumetric fog, we have this really nice lighting effect. This could be a creature, it could be a monster, it could be a jump scare, it could just be for ambience, but it's a really good way to have shadows and lighting, and to set that up into your game to make it a little bit more unique rather than just lights everywhere in your scene. I think, you know, just even if we step back and look, this could be a fan in like a venting system which is behind like a mesh, so all of this would all be projected with shadows. It would look really good, like a grill here in front so you can't get through, but you've got this large industrial fan behind that's slowly turning away. And it's something that you can replicate relatively easily. You've seen me do it in the video, you've seen me change the settings. You can pause the video and adjust the settings just how I had them. So if you look at it from this angle, you can see it's where you can see just as it gets to here where all of that volumetric shadowing is taking place, and it, in my opinion, it looks great. It's a really good lighting technique. You can also, if you wanted to, you could add another blade in. So let's add another blade, and then we have the two, and then we can have one going -50 and one going 50. There we go. So now if we go in, we've got all of these different lights effects going on, all of this shadow. it's completely up to you how you want to replicate this or what you want to do in your game. You can have some really cool. I think you can have some really cool effects playing around with lighting, but this is just one of those, just like my own take on it, just a bit of a hint, bit of a tip. So let's have these both now go in the same direction, and then we go back in and click play, and there we have that large fan effect. So let's move on to the next step. Lighting up your corridors and scene without it making it look tacky with, I'd say, what, too many lights, or let's paste that back. Okay, so the biggest tip I can think of when it comes to level designing is always scale. Make sure that your rooms are scaled correctly to your player. If you make a scene and let's just say all of your objects are too big, like, it doesn't mean that it won't work. It will still look cool to have large open walls with tall ceilings, but the problem you're going to run into, you're going to find it harder and harder to try and light these up uniformly and get them to look right. So start off small, learn the basics, and then start adding light into your scene. So with your lights, so let's go back a little bit back into the video. Let's go back to point lights. So let's add one into the scene. Now we've got our volumetric fog, exponential height fog in, so you can see there it's getting to work on this light. It's adding all of that fogginess to the light source. What we want to do is we need to check when we're adding lights into the scene. If we're not going to use static lights, which is the cheapest light, and by cheap I mean obviously not monetary value, but I mean in the sense of resource. So if you're not on a 3090 or a 4090 and you start throwing lights all over the place, even they will start to get crippled by too many lights in the scene, especially when it comes to complex lighting like movable lights. That's like your dynamic bulbs. So imagine when a car is driving through a country lane, or you know, you're in the middle of the outbacks and you've got lots of trees, lots of shadows, lots of things that your lights can create shadows for. The more complex things are, the more processing graphical power that you're going to need for your game, and then you're going to have to optimize it really badly. So static lights are the cheapest because they can have baked lighting, which means also baked shadows. By that I mean that if you have a static light, you usually can't turn them on or off, and if the light does go on or off, it usually means that the shadows aren't dynamic, everything's static, so there's no movement to it. A stationary light, so if you have a stationary light in your scene, it means that you can change the color, it means that you can increase or decrease the brightness. A static light means once that light is baked, there's nothing you can change on that light. A stationary light means that you can change its color, you can change its intensity. I've probably got this wrong, so feel free to correct me in the comments. Just be nice about it. A stationary light means that you can change all the things that you can't change or do with a static light. You just can't use it with dynamic shadows. And a dynamic light, sorry, this one will still give you dynamic shadows, but it says it there. You can't move it, but it allows partially baked lighting and dynamic shadows for movable objects. So this one's dynamic shadows but can't move. This one has fully baked lighting but it's the fastest to render. And your movable, which is your dynamic light, is things like flashlights or car headlights, a light source that's going to be moving through your scene. So a movable light, as you can see here, it's added our movable function there, our little logo. If we can then manipulate and move this around the scene for our game. So for things like flashlights, I have this set up as a dynamic movable light, which is a spotlight, and this will allow you to then have things, so you could have like a swinging light in your scene. The light could be swinging side to side like a lantern or like a candle. Just have a quick drink. So yeah, so let's set up some lights and then I'm gonna call it a day on this video. Otherwise I could probably talk till about 3 in the morning. Okay, so we're going to position this light into the scene. Now you don't ever want to just throw lights in that are like this, because it's not going to look that great if you just play a game and you've got this hovering bright spot in the center where the volumetric shadows are starting. So you want to create like and what I mean is you want to create some kind of a light source. So by that you want a like a light with a some kind of a, not that one actually, I don't like that one. Let's do this one. So we're going to do this one, but we're going to add another into the scene. So we want to keep lighting to a minimum. We don't want too many lights because it won't look that great, but we want the lights to just about overlap. It's going to be like this, and I'm going to show you a trick to use to keep the intensity of the light down. So you're going to go to where it says lit. We're going to go down to optimization view modes. I'm going to click on light complexity, and this is going to show us how complex the lighting on the bounce lighting is in the scene. We're then going to go back down to optimization mode, and we're going to go to light map density, and this is going to show us how dense that light map area is. And this is also going to give us the option to go down to our overlap. Now our overlap will show for some strange reason it didn't. It never used to look like that. Maybe I should have tested that just before I came and tried it in this video. So what I remember from this used to be looking like, it used to show you like an outline of the light source. If we set that to movable or stationary, movable, it still doesn't do it. Light map intensity. Okay, so for some strange reason that's not quite what it used to look like, but it used to have, like, can you see this sphere? It used to show this as like a big green sphere, and if they interacted it would have the red where the lights are interacting, so you could then manipulate this sphere or move this light so then it wasn't overlapping too much, creating more complex lighting. But yeah, that's strange because that used to be there and it seems to be gone or not there at all now. And it used to be under, there we go. Well, okay, so it didn't work and now it works. Oh, typical Unreal Engine. So yeah, so here is a perfect example of what I meant. So So where we have our overlapping light sources, we can see we get this green. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that if you get too many and it goes red, it means that you're gonna have too much of a the word I'm looking for. You're gonna have too much overdraw on your light processing power for your GPU. Usually it's going to render too much. It's going to have too much to render in your scene, and you also get issues as well if you have a lot of overlapping actors. You end up with shader problems like shadows, and if you had like a really complex, like a bush here with lots of branches and twigs and leaves on, it would seriously kill performance on a lot of slightly weaker systems. So you want to be careful that you don't overlap too many lights in your scene. So let's move these into place. Let's go back to lit, and we're gonna drag and drop that down here at the end of our corridor, and then we're going to drop the attenuation range down to 350, and then we're going to increase the brightness to 2000. I'm going to go down to intensity units and change that to lumens. It's going to go really bright, yeah, and then we're going to go back up to 2000. I'm going to change that to 500, and then actually we're going to change that to its default. So we're going to click the default and then change that to 100, and then increase that attenuation to 400. That's fine. We're going to get our indirect lighting intensity and set that to 3, and we're going to put our volumetric scatter into 3 as well. So there's one light set up, and then we can just move that to where we want it, and then we can drag out of that and get a second, and then we can check to see if we have an overlap, which we don't. That's good. And then we can get our third, make another one of these, and then pop this at the end here. So there we have a corridor that's lit. Let's delete that one. And then all you do then is just dress your scene up. So the reason I mentioned earlier, make sure you keep things uniform. Actually, I want to probably set that back to 1. Yeah, our point light, set our indirect light intensity to 1. It looks a little bit better. Yeah, that's better. It's only subtle, but it's a difference I think was needed. So to dress your scene or to dress your level, or just to flesh it out a little bit. So let's say if anybody's seen my community post where I posted one of my quick level design corridor kind of style ideas, which was on, yeah, it's on my community tab. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you let's use a reference. So let's get our mannequin. So we'll use our default mannequin that we all know and have seen many times. Which one to use? We'll use that T-pose one. Okay, so here's our T-posing character. So I'd say this is probably about the close to about what I would say was acceptable for me in the width of a corridor, she can just about swing a cat. Yeah. So if we've got her set up there in the center, and if we spin this round, you can see it's just wide enough to spin around with your arms out. So if we go into the game, we're probably about matched in height and size with this character. So this is probably about what I would use as like a access corridor, maintenance corridor. And I think the lighting is probably set up about right for me as well. You could probably make one or two of these blinking lights just so it's a little bit more ambient. But I hope you're following along with this anyway, and I hope it's giving you some advice and tips that you could use in your own projects. So I'm going to keep our friend here in the scene, and I'm going to just start adding a few things into the scene, and then we will texture these walls. So I'm going to go into my tutorial folder, into my auto-align texture panel here, and we've got bricks, which is great. Again, adds another contrast. Obviously it's the bricks are now on the ceiling, I don't really want them there. So how do we fix that? Well, all we do is we go into modeling tools, and then we can go down to matte edit, material edit, which is under attributes. And then if we can see here that each one of our blocks, because we created one large mesh, has two faces per side, or two sections per face. So if we go to specify radius and check on, set that to 1, we can click like just like that, and then we can do this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So then what we can do then is apply a separate texture to the top part. So we go down here to active material, we click on materials, we're going to add a new element to our array, and then we're going to select that in our active material to none, because we haven't got one yet. And then all we're going to do there is just select anything. So I'm just going to get blue, and then I'm just going to put blue custom, and then going to assign active. Now we can see there that it's set that top part there to blue, and because these are all duplicate models, it's done that for all of them, because I've changed the master one here, which is the one in our panel. So we can now add a separate texture to that, because we've now added a new element. So we go to we're going to go to my array, and we're going to go to let's think, we'll do roof panels. Yeah, that's fine, that'll do. And then we're going to do the same for this one. We're going to get all of our walls, and then we're going to go to display textures. We're going to set the brick, oops, one. It'll be this one, won't it? There we go. And then we're going to go to our roof texture. We're going to get that. We're going to get all of our walls again, and then we're going to go and display all materials, and then we're going to set them. So now we've created a corridor. This is rushed, so yeah, it's not the best in the world, but it's a start, right? And it's something you can learn from. And then we're going to apply a texture to this floor here. So we'll do, should do tiled. And then we can move our lovely lady actor here out of our way. So there we have a simple corridor set up. We've got textures. If you want to learn how to make these auto-align textures, which are really good to use, because no matter where I move, you can see here in my if you look closely at the bricks when I move it, the texture moves with the brick. So if you watch you focus on this block here, when I move, it will just auto align the texture to the pixels of the object. So even if I stretch that, make that bigger, it will keep the UV, and it will just stretch the mesh, but it will keep the texture without stretching the texture, which is really good for level design because it means you can do things quickly without having to readjust and reset up all of your UVs and your projection maps and everything else. So we have a corridor, we have that set up, and then we want to start adding some detail through shadows to our scene. So what we can do is we can add things like pipes, and then pipes are going to give you a little bit more layer in the level. I don't know what pipe to use, so let's just pop the one that I think will work into the scene. Oops. And we'll pop that there, and then to there. So then we have an extra layer into our scene with our shadows, and we can just keep doing this. Let's add a texture to this pipe, so we'll go steel, and then we'll get like scratched metal, which looks really good, and then we can move this into position, just like this, and we'll move it down slightly, so let's right click, pivot, offset here, and out and across, down. So there we have a pipe in our corridor, and then you can just keep on adding things like graffiti or barrels. We could get some, let's get some rusty barrels, metal, or should we do Quixel Bridge quick adds? Oops, that one. So let's go to local, and then we'll go to, let's see, we've got, here we go, we've got an old metal can here, so let's drag that and drop that into our scene, so we can do things like this, you know, and pop these, make this a little bit bigger, make another one that's slightly smaller, slightly twisted round. You can stack them at the bottom of the pipe there, looks like somebody's been doing some work. And then we can add things like trash bags into the scene if we want to, and stick these underneath the pipes, and then make this one slightly smaller, add a third one in, and then rotate this round so it's not the same way. And then we've got some bags in the alleyway or the corridor, and then we can just keep on layering things up. So we've got some barrels here that we could add into the scene. We can use our character for size reference. We can move out of the way once we figure out how big we want the object to be. And you just want to kind of just keep on slowly adding. Remember, you can add and you can take away. So we have a really cool hand cart here for deliveries, so we can pop that in there, drag it up, press the end key, oops, press the end key. Oh, it hasn't got collision set up properly, so it won't drop down to the floor. And then we're going to set that up just there, and then we're going to check to see how high it is off the floor, and then that's probably about where I want it. And then we can, let's see what else we have. We have cool, this little electrical panel that I can stick on the wall and pop that about maybe here. And we're just dressing our scene slowly, and we can add some rusty chains. We can do maybe on the other side of the pipe, go into the ceiling. Do this, and then we can do one more that's slightly higher. And we can probably move them a bit higher up. We've then got things like graffiti, so we can add that in. Now, if you drag a decal and it looks like this, an absolute mess, just press the G key, look for the purple arrow, and then you're going to rotate it so it matches with that purple arrow. And then you're going to drag the center until you get it really small, and then it will start to appear on the wall. And then all you do then is you get the red one and you drag that in until it vanishes like black, and then you come back a little bit, and then there you have your graffiti. Now if it's upside down like this, don't panic, just grab the green and go just like that, and then it will put it in the right direction for you. So we've got a little bit of graffiti on the wall. We're going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to slowly turn that, drop that down slightly, and then we can see there as we start to build through this corridor, we can start to add things as we go down. Physics objects, bottles on the floor, dirt piles, but that's basically how I design levels. I get the basic idea of what I want to design. I add the walls in, I texture up the walls so I know what I'm working with, and then I just start to slowly add piece by piece. I'd constantly readjust things as I go. I'm never 100% happy with anything. But yeah, that's just a quick, I'd say quick, it's quite a long now, but it's just a quick video to try and show you, at least give you a little bit of inspiration to how I do it, to maybe help you with your own game and your own ideas. But if you appreciate the time that I've taken to make this video for you guys, then please hit the like button. I'm only doing this to try and help you out. If you dislike it, that's fine, dislike the video, I'm not going to take it personally. Help by sharing the video with others that might be struggling with their own games or projects. And if you want to help support the channel any other way, you can hit that subscribe button as well. It doesn't cost you a penny, it helps the channel grow, and it enables me to make more videos like this to help other people out. You can always donate to my coffee fund if you want to help me buy a coffee and keep me going. But yeah, I appreciate everybody, appreciate all the subscribers, appreciate all my patrons, and appreciate everybody for everything you've said in the comments. I really, really do appreciate it. So I'll see you all in the next video. I hope you like this one. Take care. Bye bye for now. I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.